Hi.
Hey!
I'd like to
How are
always
you?
have that. I'd love to always have that response when I come on tour.
Well, we're for hire. If you'd like that, I can just turn up.
I love it. Hello,
Turns up at
both.
people's weddings and parties and greets them so lovely.
It's so nice to see you both.
Lovely to see you, Katie. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It's
Oh, my
brilliant to
goodness.
see
Of
you.
course. What a pleasure. Am I sounding all
You
right?
can't.
Yeah, you sound
You
fabulous.
sound great. Where are you? You're not in it because you live in LA, don't you? But
I actually moved. I now live in New Mexico, which is a whole other story, but I'm actually in London at the moment.
Oh,
In
because I wondered about the LA thing because you're rural, aren't you? You like the country, you like the big
Yeah,
skies.
so
like
I moved to LA in about 2015. And then 3 years ago, we just decided to completely get out of Dodge. I've never really been a city person. I just think cities are not a great idea. And so we got out and moved up 7,000 feet up a mountain in Santa Fe in New Mexico, which is
fabulous.
Georgia O'Keeffe territory. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Who's we? Who's we?
Me and my other half, Chris.
Never you mind.
Well,
None of
you
your
know.
business.
So
There might be 12 of them. I don't know. Might be a commune.
Me and my harem.
Or an observatory. Maybe you started an observatory so you can get your eyes
It
with
would
telescope.
be a very good place for it, I have to say. But yeah, no,
But
it's my other half.
It's really tricky doing that, isn't it? Because you've got to, friends, reinvent your friends and find your where you. I mean, did you feel disorientated when you first landed?
It's such a good question. I was never one of those kids that had like a tight clique at school. I never really did that. And I always had friends who were at other schools or, I met on holiday and they were from somewhere else. And so while I palled about with the same people at school, as I got into being a touring musician, you just end up with these really good soulmate friends in completely disparate places all over the world. And they often don't know each other. So you then get this thrill whenever it kind of comes up that you can actually get them to meet each other as well. But what I've found is that I travel so much that I see the people I love, a handful of times a year. And so I don't sort of feel like I've got that need of really close community where I'm living, which is quite liberating. So Chris and I, my other half, moved to Santa Fe and we don't know that many people and we actually really love it.
Do you know it's true though, Guy, isn't it? Because I mean, you're occasionally in London. I live in London. Most of my friends live in London, but maybe only see them once a year now and again.
This is what was happening in LA. That I lived in Topanga Canyon, which is like you've got to kind of
Nice.
It's beautiful, but you've got to like
hiking
come
paradise,
down the mountain from there to get into town. And then everyone I knew in LA lived in East LA and in Silver Lake and over that way, Echo Park. And I mean, it's like driving from Edinburgh to Glasgow. Like you wouldn't do that just to go and have a coffee.
That's
Were you there in the fires? You weren't there when the fires. You got out.
No,
I
mean, I was there. 2020 had some pretty terrible fires, and I mean, it's just apocalyptic. Like the sky just goes brown, and it just it doesn't smell of campfire. It smells of like burning tires. It's just so acrid. And that was pretty scary. And that was definitely one of the reasons we were talking about leaving. Because Chris said to me, we were sitting having dinner one night. We were right on top of a ridge. So it was quite difficult for us to get out. And he said, we should really get secondhand dirt bikes. I said, what? And he goes, yeah, we need to be able to get on a bike to get out of here because it's going to be gridlock. And I was like, I think we should just leave. let's not get dirt bikes and let's live somewhere else. But there's quite a few different kind of apocalyptic scenarios in LA with, earthquake and fires and power cuts and things like that. So it kind of rumbles all the time living somewhere like that something like that can happen.
I think you get that with creative hubs in the same way as, because there is that thing in LA. I used to live in LA, so did Gary.
Right, yeah. Where did you live?
There's that thing that it's, I was up Benedict. Okay, have you seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Of course.
Right there, 50 yards
wow.
away, on Benedict Canyon.
Amazing.
I lived in West Hollywood up on Crescent Heights.
Yeah.
So, But
Go on,
there
Guy.
is that thing, at that slight end of the world thing, that it's
Yeah.
all going into the sea at some point. And it's
Yeah.
in the way I think that Berlin used to feel like. There's
Yeah.
and I think that's creativity thrives on that. Maybe there's no
existential
tomorrow.
threat is great for songwriting, apparently.
And is Santa Fe going to be great for songwriting?
I think it is. I have to say that I've not been writing a lot of personal songs since the lockdown, really, because I really dived into musical theatre during that time. And unlike an album, as you're well aware, Gary, which is like going to be 10 to 12 tunes, a musical is like 20 songs. So and you're kind of constantly having to change it. So that's sort of been taking up my creative juice for a while now. And I'm looking forward to getting back to writing. But Santa Fe is very magnetic, somewhere that has always kind of historically really enticed artists to go up the mountain and be there. So there's only like 80,000 people there, and there's 300 art galleries.
Just paint a picture of it, because I've never been.
So it looks like a Clint Eastwood film set. It's they in the 1920s, after the war, Santa Fe joined this sort of movement that was going on globally called City Beautiful, where cities decided to kind of rebuild themselves in a unique way to where they were. And so the mayor of Santa Fe in the 20s decided that you could only build Spanish adobe buildings. And I think it's probably one of the only places in the world where this is true. And so even the bank and the Walmart and Target are Spanish orange adobe with wood beams coming out the top. And so it's amazing the effect on you. I mean, you get it sometimes if you go up to like, a ski resort or something like that, which Santa Fe kind of is because it's at 7,000 feet, but everything looks beautiful. And we forget what a great effect that has on us when everything you're looking at looks great. And, traveling around, a lot of the cities are very homogenized, and you're not really sure where you are. You could be on the same high street. And so it's really nice to be somewhere that's very uniquely itself.
Wes Anderson.
Yeah. It's basically like living in a Wes Anderson movie.
But is there a sort of indigenous community as well?
So that's
is there that sort
another-
of spiritual
yeah.
thing as well?
That's another reason why I really like it. I mean, as soon as I moved to LA, I got this sort of obsession with Southwest aesthetic, which made more sense to me than British kind of humble jumble. Like I really liked the kind of vintage aesthetic of the UK, but there was something about that sort of more mid-century kind of wooden toned. I don't know what I loved about it, but the Frank Lloyd Wright kind of open plan living thing really, really inspired me, and I felt very at home in that environment. What did you ask, Gary? I can't remember. I just went on to
I was
architecture.
asking about the indigenous community.
Yeah, so the indigenous community,
Frank Lloyd Wright, of course.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
which
yes.
immediately took me to Frank
So
Lloyd
we
Wright.
slipped into Radio 4
no, but that's
again.
funny because I was going to say Frank Lloyd Wright because I couldn't remember if it was there or somewhere else that there was a big Frank Lloyd Wright presence, and he's in Santa Fe.
No, he's not
Amazing.
in Santa Fe. He was in LA, but that's what
In LA.
I got really
But
into it. And
okay,
then
I'm thinking of somewhere
it
else.
was the sort of graduation when we got to Santa Fe where there was all of that aesthetic was there, but also you've got this real kind of appreciation of indigenous art and indigenous culture and life. And there's not that many places in America where you really feel like that's happening. And while it's still problematic, it is at least celebrated a lot. And every Saturday you can go to the plaza and it's all the indigenous artists selling stuff, and it's beautiful.
Sorry, Guy, sorry.
Well, it was just a little aside because it harks back to what you were saying about the indigenous thing, and also you're talking about the distances, right? That was just so different over there. And my favourite saying about the difference between Britain and America is that in America, 100 miles is nothing, 100 years is everything.
Yeah,
In
wow,
Britain,
yeah.
100 years is nothing, 100
100
miles
miles
is everything.
That's such a good saying, and it's so true. It's really not a big deal for me to drive 5 hours to go because I've got a gig. Where I am in Santa Fe, I'm like, oh, I've got a gig in Denver. It's 6 hours. I might just drive it. And of course, the country is also built for that road trip culture. So it's definitely different.
For me, you know, I lived in LA and I've lived in Ireland, and I'm always coming home, which is London,
Yeah.
my local football team, and all of that.
Yeah.
But your life seems to be, you know, looking at it, and very, very different. Very much traveling. You know, you were adopted,
Yeah.
so the sense of roots that
Yeah.
I have, maybe you don't have. Katie, is that fair enough
I
to
think
say?
that that's fair. I had this wanderlust from a really, really young age. And I think it was partly because my dad, who was a physicist, got a sabbatical in LA when I was 4. So we actually uprooted from the UK and lived in LA for the whole of 79 and part of 80.
Can I just say that is beyond any level of glamour imaginable for most 4-year-old
No.
British people. Do
I
you know
know.
what I mean?
And the best part was,
It's like,
the
you just
best part
gone,
was I
right,
was
that is like,
I was a full tilt Valley girl. I had a Valley girl accent, and my dad used to record.
Taco Bell.
Yeah, our dad used to record us on little cassette tapes, and it's me going, "I want a drink of water." I was like
Gag on a
Cher
spoon.
Horowitz when I was 4. And
Did you have an alpha spider when you were 4?
But it was my first. Yeah, exactly. It was my first memories were California. So it's swimming
Amazing.
pools and grape flavor and sunshine and hot Christmas and, you know. So I think
what about
that
music?
it kind of imprinted on me like a bit of a little duckling, where it felt.
But was
very
there music
familiar.
there? Katie,
Well,
sorry, was there music
No,
in
my
LA?
mum and dad didn't really listen to music. It was really, it's
Really?
strange. No, they didn't really have a music collection. And then my younger brother was born, and he was profoundly deaf. So that made it sort of even more difficult to have any music in the background, because it would make it really difficult for Dan to hear anything on his hearing aids. And my dad had like a really weird sort of 8 cassette tape music collection, which was
8-track.
Yeah, no, like 8
No,
tape.
literally 8 cassettes.
Yeah.
Right.
And he had like Beethoven and Mozart, Billie Holiday, the Chariots of Fire soundtrack, which I loved because it was filmed in St Andrews, obviously. I loved that because it's Vangelis, which is just brilliant. And then this guy called Tom Lehrer, who was like a satirist.
The satirist. The satirist, yeah.
Who's a genius.
Amazing.
And so,
Genius.
like, my
Who
favorite song,
retired. Sorry,
yeah,
yes.
my favorite song when I was 4 was The Table of Elements. So I'm just running around.
Oh my
That's right.
Hydrogen and lithium and oxygen. And,
just fantastic.
Ridiculous. So, but there was no real collection growing up, so I wasn't listening to stuff.
It's funny because I'll touch on that later, because that song, even though it was a pop song and a novelty song to a large extent, had a lot to do with one of those list songs that you get in musical theatre.
That's totally true.
Which is Gilbert and Sullivan,
yeah.
right?
Gilbert and Sullivan,
yes.
exactly. And it's really genius writing. It's like, how do you get as much information as possible into a tune?
Yeah.
What were you saying? He retired when, Guy? What were you saying?
Tom Lehrer famously retired the day that Kissinger got the Nobel Peace Prize, because he said, how can I possibly write satire? This is beyond anything I could ever come up with.
We will
What's the
all
point?
go together when we go the atomic bomb song.
Yeah.
I think he only just recently passed away anyway. But
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
a big deal in our
a genius. But that's really cool.
But
Well,
also, do you know that-
Dad was very clever, wasn't
Yeah,
he? So
he was very clever. But Tom Lehrer also ended up doing some writing for Sesame Street. And I always felt like the songwriting on Sesame Street was amazing. They were such good songs where kids would sing along, but adults would be able to laugh at it. You know, it was quite funny what they were
But also,
writing.
it's funny you say that, because that Sesame Street crew, all the people who did that music, were the kind of cool New York session guys. It's the people who all grew up to become Chic and play on Let's Dance and be all the Nile Rodgers guys. That was all. It was Sesame Street was a hip gig.
Oh, I
in
was
the
just
70s.
it was the SNL of the 70s. I was just like, I was
SNL for
obsessed with
kids.
Sesame Street music. I loved it, and I still think it's really good.
You've done some music for kids as well, haven't you?
Have
Didn't
I?
you do something?
Oh yes, I did.
Did
I
you
did
do
a couple
something?
of.
Yes, you
I
did.
sang
Thank
a
God
couple of
I got that
Disney
right.
tunes. I sang on a Tinkerbell movie for Disney, and it's amazing how many kids really get attached to that music. So I actually recently had a gig at Epcot at Disney World. And, you know, the one thing that's a shame about traveling the world and playing gigs almost every night of the week is you rarely get to play for little kids. You know, they can't come into the theatre. And I've always thought to myself, God, I should let little kids come to the sound check or something, because it's just joy on a stick. It's so great playing for tiny people. So I played Epcot Disney World, and and that was the first time I actually played those Disney songs live, and it was just such a joy.
You know what? That's funny you say this, because Guy and I, in our introduction earlier, we would normally have a chat about various other bits and pieces, and we were speaking about the age difference between the musician and the average age of that person's fan.
Yes, it's weird,
And
right?
and it came out of the fact that you were 30 when you had your first hit.
Yeah.
And wondering if your audience were your age or younger.
Yeah.
And what's the answer to that? Were you singing to people in their 20s and teenagers,
I think I was
or
singing
more
to
your own age?
mostly people around my age. And then I went to South America, and a really weird thing happened when people may have told you, but it's incredible playing in South America. The music fans are just so uninhibited.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I found when I went to South America is that all the fans were at least 10 years younger than me. It was a much younger demographic of people coming to the gigs, which was really surprising. And then I played the other day, you know, did a little Soho House kind of, you know, kind of intimate gig. And I thought it was just going to be a bunch of us in our 50s having a Negroni, you know, and like
people
a
in
really
branding.
quiet little sedate affair. And almost everyone was under 30, if not under 25. And they were all there with their phones out singing all the words. And I was like, what is happening? And my label boss had come to the gig, and he was like, hang on a minute, we need to rethink this whole re-release thing, because now it's a bunch of people's kids who've grown up on the record are coming out and actually want to come and see the gig live, come and see the album live.
But you get pockets of that. There seems to be like, do you find that in Italy, for instance? I bet you get a lot of young people.
Don't break my heart. I'm so sad to say that I didn't really get going in Italy. I had this sort of like flash in the pan, and it's the best place to tour. It's the best food and everything. But they kind of marketed me as a very, very pop star, and it wasn't particularly sustainable. So I very sadly didn't end up going back to Italy very much.
It's
rubbish. Do you know what, though? What you said earlier about being surprised at the younger audience. I mean, this is the case, and we've spoken about it on this show a few times. But when I was in the 80s, if I was going to find a band from the 60s, it would be by chance in a secondhand record store, and I would take a risk based on the cover shot. But that's not the case now. You know, everything is available to all ages, and my kids listening to, you know, as I've said before, Steely Dan, or, you know, coming up with even, you know, if you look in America now, you know, Creedence Clearwater Revival are one of the biggest bands in America, haven't released a record since 1973 because of streaming and because of TikTok, etc. And so it's the same for you. Your record company must be now thinking, right, you know, eye to the telescope, you know, let's get it on TikTok. Let's just awaken some kids to this great music, because it's timeless.
And I heard the other day, that's right. And I heard the other day that it was a radio plugger I know in Nashville, and he said that his daughter was turning 16 and getting a car, and said she wanted a second-hand car that was older than 2016 so that it had a CD player in it. And it's like, oh my God, I did not see that coming. But yeah, I've noticed a lot of younger people are quoting back to me, you know, 70s, 60s, 80s music.
Well, they don't know the difference, because the one thing you don't have, Gary, when you're saying that, is like you know, we would base our choices on a cover. That's the one thing they don't see. All they know is the song. So it's completely different. They're just going on the song. Yeah,
so they're not really getting that kind of that bias from what it looks like.
But my son thought Oasis were a 70s band.
Really?
Thought they were 70s. Yeah.
Wow.
Like, why wouldn't
Oasis think they're a 70s band. Oasis think they're a 60s band.
Oasis wish they were a 70s band.
But what they're not getting is interesting, what you said with this subject, because they're not getting the cultural reference, right? Because when your album came out, there were cultural connections that made it relevant, and that's not there for them then. There's also
Yeah.
something else that's not there. There's not the generational sort of soundtrack. It's not like, and there's not that, when we bought records, they were hopefully disliked by our parents.
Yeah.
We were making a statement. You were, as an indie artist, doing your thing in your 20s, driving your parents crazy, probably.
Yeah.
That cultural reference isn't there now for kids, because they're in love with bands that are granddads, but
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a faction of, I have a few friends who are girl dads, and they're definitely finding it quite difficult, where there's their young daughters into like hypersexualized kind of the rap scene, or the sort of hip,
so there's a
more
different
R&B
thing going
stuff.
on there.
And I think that's probably quite challenging, because it's definitely very, very prevalent, that stuff as well,
Yeah,
But, the
absolutely.
context that you're talking about for me was that there wasn't any girls with instruments. That was really new. And when I was trying to get a record deal, I remember going into a record deal office and the guy said to me, "We really like you, but we've already got a girl that plays something."
Yeah.
It's just like,
Oh my God.
what? Like, how many of your guys play something,
Yeah.
And
Well, the other relevant. Sorry.
And it was
carry on.
Norah Jones had kicked that off, because when I was coming up at the early 2000s, it was all indie boy bands. It was Franz Ferdinand, it was the Killers, it was Kings of Leon. That's what everybody wanted to know about, were kind of, indie stroke pop, good looking guy bands. And so I couldn't get arrested. And then Norah Jones really opened the floodgates, and suddenly every record label was like, "We need our girl who plays something." Um, and then that really changed. Well, I couldn't get a gig through the late 90s and the early 2000s. When I was in Scotland, I had to like put my own gigs on to get gigs.
Well, it seems
Sorry,
amazing because that seems really quite recent. Do you know, for that to
I
be
know, it's
happening?
quite a long time ago now.
Well, another thing, I think, in terms of change of culture, talking about TikTok and everything like that, would it be possible for you to have the breakout TV performance that you
Yeah.
had?
Well, it's
Would that be
interesting
a thing?
Well,
because,
you do, because you would have gone
later's
viral.
still on.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
later's still on. And
Yeah.
I think it was really interesting because that performance on Jools Holland was like one of the very first viral videos. Like, YouTube was brand new. And I never imagined that it would be people watching what I was doing being as important as hearing the song. But it was actually, arguably it was people seeing what I was doing that made it work. And so thank God YouTube was a thing, because when I was gigging in the late 90s, I was sending people postcards by mail. I was getting their mail addresses at the end of gigs. And I was talking to my friend about this the other day, and it's like, isn't that crazy that we're the last generation that's going to ever remember putting stamps on postcards and sending them strangers to tell them when your gig was?
So what do you think it was that got you into music? You've got a family that don't have any pop
Yeah.
music. I mean, how come you became
It,
musical?
it was just complete innate passion for music. So I've got on my wall at home, I've got this little piece of sepia faded out paper, and it was me when I was probably 3 or something, but I'm writing notes. I'm trying to write music staves and notes. And that's before I could write words. I was just obviously, and I drew a little guitar, and didn't even play guitar till I was 15. But when I was 4, I think it was was it after we were in America? It might have been just before. I was pleading my mum and dad to get me a piano, because my piano teacher at school played piano, and I just thought it was like this spaceship that she was in charge of, and I couldn't get my head around how cool this thing was. So they bought me like a 99 quid secondhand piano that just fit in my bedroom. And then I was just in there every hour possible, just learning. And then they got me some piano lessons, but I was just obsessed with
Learning how?
playing
Yes.
things.
How are you learning?
Yeah. So
What are you
at first I
playing?
was playing by ear, just playing around, and getting you. I mean, I was just fascinated with the whole thing. I would like sit on the sustain pedal and just bash it. And then just listen to this. It sounded like, it was going down into a cave. So I just
Yes.
loved everything about it. And then I started getting lessons, and I didn't really like lessons. I wasn't very good at lessons, but I did get my theory, and I went through the whole rigmarole. And then I never really got that brilliant at piano. It was never that natural. But when I was 15, there was, you get your free periods to study for exams. I would always just go up to the music department and nick a guitar from the guitar teacher and started teaching myself guitar. And to his credit, he never tried to pressure me into getting lessons. He just said, take the guitar, off you go. And I just taught myself. And that was the instrument where I was like, okay, this is my instrument.
I've seen you do a thing on YouTube, like a guitar lesson thing about how not playing bar chords, how you always like to play open chords.
Yeah. So I've got skinny fingers and big lumpy knuckles, which means that it's really...
Yes, look away, children.
Oh, it's disgusting. And so bar chords...
Sounds like a couple of wrestlers.
You basically... When you see bands with bar chords, it just means it's blokes with big sausage fingers that they can just put the bar chords all the way along and it's flat. And I don't have that. So I had to kind of completely make up more open chords, which actually ended up being quite interesting in my songwriting and making it sound quite different because I was using these odd chords. So I didn't often know what chord I was playing. I was just finding it.
Because you went back to LA, didn't you go? Or you went back to America?
I went back to America. So I think I was always wanting to get back to America. So I went back and did my final year of secondary school. I got this scholarship and I managed to get back over there to Connecticut. And it was like this really
1 year of school,
really posh boarding school. Because in Scotland you do hires, and the hires are basically much easier than A levels, and you do like 5 hires at once. And I finished school on my 17th birthday, and I had everything I needed. And I was like, I'm not going to uni when I'm 17, and I can't even go to the pub. So I went to America for a year and did a year of school. It was brilliant.
Was there music involved?
Yes, there was a lot of music involved in that. So, because I grew up in St Andrews, it was not very easy to kind of get around. There's not even a train station in St Andrews. You could get the bus to like Dundee or Edinburgh, but it was a long way. So I didn't go to...
Are there just golf caddies going everywhere?
Yeah, just get a lift with a caddy. So I didn't watch any gigs when I was growing up. There wasn't really any gigs going on. So America was the first time I went and saw really
I can honestly say I've never played St Andrews. I've never played.
Yeah,
Have you guys?
I would be surprised.
Sorry. So you saw gigs in America?
In America was the first time I saw proper gigs. I saw Van Morrison. I saw Fish in Vermont when I went up there. They're like very early days, sort of weed propelled experimental rock band. I saw the Grateful Dead. I saw Blues Traveler. I saw, who else did I see? I think I saw Sheryl Crow. But it was just, I had my first band in America, started busking when I was over there. So it was really formative.
Wow. What are you busking? Have you got your own songs?
Well,
yet,
the thing was, I'm still terrible at remembering lyrics. So I wasn't a very good covers guitarist. So I would play my own stuff. But then there was a handful of songs that I learned that would make me some money.
What did you find you were writing songs about? What was your lyrical influence?
My lyrical influence was really journalistic. So it was like I've kept a journal since I was about 12 or 13. And, it started off going, Alison's a bitch. And by the time I got to 17 and I was traveling, I could start journaling about my travels and where I was going and what I was learning and what I was seeing. And so I would use it as a bit of a tool, but it was often just about heartbreak and, relationships and friendships and very, very personal storytelling.
One of the things that really interested me when I was looking at your story was you saying your parents weren't musical, but your real father was.
Yeah.
And it just, I mentioned this to my wife. you know, because all of my sons are musical, and she often wonders if it was genetic or just nurture.
I
What's
am
your theory?
convinced there's a genetic hereditary element to musicality. Absolutely. I've met people who are musical and none of their biological family are. So that happens too. But more often than not, I've met families that are just spectacularly musical from generation to generation. And I think to my mum and dad's credit, they weren't musical, but they could recognize that it was something innate. I mean, I don't know about you, but I just felt like I was born bilingual, where music was just made sense and it just seemed really easy. And so I was able to just hear something and play it back or sing it back. And I found it easy to find what I was looking for on whatever instrument. And it was certainly easy to sort of get lost in it, you know, and get lost in that world. But my mum and dad recognized that and then got me the lessons and always encouraged me.
You know what?
Because there can be a very scientific side to it, can't there? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like being around. People say that there's the pure louche bohemian artist, but there's also the mathematician side of music as well.
I think I think a lot of modern pop music could be described as being pretty mathematical. There's a lot of stuff that's done that's data-driven songwriting, and it's like you're somewhat painting by numbers. And I think that it's so extraordinary when you hear something that cuts through that, and you're like, "Oh, that's original," you know.
Do you know what I think partly as well? And I think, you know, if we are all, even if on the face of it, it looked happy, we all have childhoods that traumatized us to a certain extent at one point or another. And a lot of the people I know in music, all three of us here, I think, were trying to control something at one point in a life that you don't feel that in control of. And music gave you that control. It's in the bars, it's in the beats, it's in the fact that I've written this, I own it.
You own it, and you've created it, and you've made your world. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's the thing that where you just said it's you're suddenly in a space of your own making.
Yeah,
aren't you?
I mean, I remember when I got my first laptop that could burn a CD, and it just was in terms of like being in control of your own destiny. The fact that I could write a song, record it on this machine, and then just press a button and this thing popped out, and I could hold it in my hand and send it to an A&R guy or send it to my friends. That was just like absolute freedom. It was so cool. But I think, you know, if someone said to me once that if you're on stage, you either weren't loved enough or you're loved too much.
Yeah, I've heard you say that, and it actually made me think a lot. And I think there's a lot to be said to that. I also think you can put too much on external circumstances.
Definitely.
In any situation, there are the people who are quiet and there are the people who perform.
But there's,
like, you know,
but then
office,
you get people who are
or...
both of those things, Guy. Where you get someone like Nick Drake, who's a real favorite songwriter of mine, where the guy is just like completely riddled with anxiety and hates the public side of what he does, but is still completely compelled to do it, knowing that he's going to have to get in front of people.
Rather than to perform. Yeah, that's okay. Well, that's true. And like you get actors like that, don't you?
I mean, I feel bad for people who have to struggle with that, because the compulsion to be the artist and make the stuff and perform it, and then really having to struggle through. I mean, I think Annie Lennox has struggled with stage anxiety as well. And it doesn't even compute. You look at her performing and you think, what an absolute force of nature. You wouldn't dream that she was finding that difficult.
It's an interesting subject. I mean, sorry, no, go on.
It's a great one.
Because when Nick goes on, go.
You go.
When Nick goes on stage, he goes on stage with what appears to be a massive ego. I mean, you know, just his persona, you know, standing on the audience, and I think that's probably a facade that he puts on. He wears.
Are you talking about Nick Cave?
No, who are you talking about?
Nick. Where were we before? I must have missed this.
Yes, no, I was.
You were saying Nick Drake.
That's it. Nick Mason.
Nick Drake, who's
Drake.
no longer with us.
Nick Cave is something else altogether. He's terrifying. He's a shaman.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no. So okay. Well,
Listen,
Nick Drake. I
there's
get
so
all of
many
that.
iconic Nicks to choose from. We've got to be
I
specific.
wanna just
because we're in a band with one, Nick Mason, who's just the most affable, genial sort of bloke who comes on. But it's
I don't think you could do a thesis on Nicks.
Yeah,
but let me just go on. Let me just.
can.
Okay, I obviously got something wrong, but it put me in a place that made me want to ask a question, which is at that period when you were starting to make it, unlike Susie Quattro, unlike Chrissie Hynde, there had to be some bit more autobiographical feel to music, didn't there? There was a sense of, especially with women, maybe, you can't pretend you're a rock star. We want to know exactly who you are. What's your, did you,
Well,
but then when I look at the Jools Holland thing, you had amazing personality, stage presence.
Thank you. I think something I've come to really appreciate, and I feel like I've got a good understanding of over the years, is the idea of punk, the idea of rock and roll, the idea of cool, and the idea of authentic, and all of these things, and these things that we kind of have these images and perceptions of what they are. And I found as I was sort of moving through that world, once I'd sort of had some success, that a lot of the things that people thought were cool, I really didn't think were cool. Like this kind of facade of looking like you don't care and looking like you don't want to be there. And I'm like side of stage going, I know for sure that guy is so made up that he's on stage in front of these people and he's pretending that he would rather be somewhere else because it's cool.
That's so true, because even and we've said before, we love Oasis, but that whole kind of wearing an anorak on stage, what's that saying is
looking
like
moody.
I'm only going to be here for a bit because I've got to go, right?
Yeah,
it's like the actor who doesn't take his coat off at a party because he's got a
exactly.
party to go to.
That's the scarf. Yeah, I've got somewhere else to be.
But we love it, don't we? We love that attitude. And it's the charisma that goes with that kind of attitude. But what I knew when I started, before I even got anywhere, was I was not like that. I was a very sensitive girl next door folk artist, really, was where I came from. And so where Chrissie Hynde and Susie Quattro, that was their expression, was coming at their career ready dressed in leather, with the attitude. And I think it always made sense to me, as much as I loved other artists who had a persona, I knew that wasn't for me. That wasn't going to happen. And I also knew that, you see someone like Beyonce or like, I don't know, like, Michael Jackson, say, and you want there to be a kind of veil between the audience. You want to look at this person as a god.
Or Bowie.
What's that?
Or Bowie.
Yeah, or Bowie, exactly. There's you can never be like them. You will never be of them. They are exalted. They are on the pedestal. And also with a show like that, which is really interesting, and Bowie maybe doesn't fit into this, you want a perfect show. You want everything to be flawless. You want it to look magical. It's like a magic
everything
trick.
is a construct. They and their
you
world
do not
is a construct.
Want to see Beyonce falling down a hole on stage. And I knew that what I wanted to do was, depends what you like. But I think I knew that I was really interested in taking my busking self on stage and making you feel like you were in my living room. That was what I felt excited with, the kind of songs I had.
Going back, to what we were talking about the pressure and the nonchalance of being on stage, is like, for instance, like your Jools performance, you're inventing this added pressure of, you can be two things. You can go on with a band, right, and be that person fronting a band, or you can go on your own and play the song on your own.
Yeah.
You've given yourself the pressure of, I've got to go on, start up a whole band, and then do the song. So you're reliant on all this other stuff going right before you start.
Yeah.
You better explain a loop pedal to people, because that's the key to it.
So the trick to all of that, before I explain, is everything going wrong is brilliant. It's I had 10 years of playing where fans would come to me at the backstage door and they'd say, am I allowed to swear, by the way? They'd come to the back door and they'd say, my favorite bit was when you fucked up. That was like over and over again. I'd hear my favorite bit was when you made that mistake. And I was like, this is nuts. I'm like trying so hard to get this perfect. And then it just really dawned on me. It's just they want realness. They want to see what you do in the face of it going wrong. They want to see how you deal with it. And then I really had this realization that as a performer, you can really feel like there's this abyss, right? There's this cliff that you could fall off and everything would just go horrifically wrong. And I realized that maybe that is true with Beyonce and there is an actual cliff because she's on this massive stage. But for me, it didn't exist. That it was a fallacy. And that actually I should really enjoy these moments of chaos. And so my absolute mantra now is just preparedness allows chaos. And so you just do as much as you can to make sure that it's a good show and people get their tickets worth. And then you let go and you have a great time when shit goes south.
The loop pedal.
That's quite a sort of Malcolm McLaren type mantra, isn't it? Just fail spectacularly.
Yeah, fail well.
No, it's Beckett. It's Beckett, isn't it? Samuel Beckett said that.
And I'd studied theatre studies at college when I was at Royal Holloway at university, and my favourite course was about the subject of commedia dell'arte, which is the original Italian clowning.
One man, two governors.
Oh, and it was just this beautiful kind of psychology of performance and how the clown is loved because the audience is able to watch the clown go through shame and pain and everything else and feel relief that it's not them, that it's not you. So it's actually providing this like medicinal service at laughing at someone having terrible misfortune, knowing that it's not happening to you. And so I love that sort of
This is why I do the show with Guy, you see. Anyway. No,
but,
sorry.
I know my place.
The loop pedal, very simple.
Yes.
Say you've got a cardboard box and it's got a little tape recorder inside it, and you can tell the tape recorder when to start repeating, and you kick the cardboard box with your boot 4 times. If you press it at just the right time for it to loop, you're going to hear that cardboard box getting hit with a boot in perfect time, and it sounds like a kick drum. And then you can add whatever you want to that loop. And it's very easy to get it wrong. You can definitely make a right mess of it. You've got to have perfect rhythm. So that was when my tap dancing classes came into the fore, and they were very useful. But I remember a woman in America once said to me, "Katie, I've got a bone to pick with you." I was like, "What?" She goes, "My husband bought one of those loop pedals and it sounds shitty." And I was like, "I don't think it's the loop pedal, madam."
Yeah.
But it's just endless fun and it's endless challenge. And I think because it can go wrong, it keeps it really fun for me.
Because this is what, when you look back at that famous Jools Holland moment, and we'll talk about how you came to be on that and how it came to happen at the age of 30.
Yeah.
It's the high wire
The
act
ripe old age of 30.
Yeah. It's the high wire. It's the high wire act of what you're doing, right? The risk, the high risk, which is, I get nervous watching it and I know it's going to succeed. But
Gary, that was the crazy thing. After it came out, I watched it and I nearly had a panic attack. And for about 2 months after the Jools Holland thing came out, I almost couldn't watch it because I kept thinking it was going to go wrong. It was really weird.
Yeah. So it's
like watching Apollo 13, isn't it?
It's your voice. Your voice is amazing in it.
Thank you.
And you can see when it cuts to all the other artists in the room, they are gobsmacked at what you're doing.
Cool.
It's so unique. I mean, it says things about you as a solo artist, like, fuck having a band. I am my own band, you know, and you banging the piano as a kid, like you said earlier, and listening to Go Back into Echo. That's how it starts. You banging the guitar.
banging the guitar and banging the piano. Yeah, definitely. And it was totally just it was just necessity. I couldn't afford a band. And the weird,
I was wondering, yeah, because you didn't set out to do that, did you?
no,
That
I
wasn't,
made
you
a
know, to be in sort
record
of Ed
with,
Sheeran.
it was still stripped back. I made a record with a drummer, and then the producer, Steve Osborne, played a bit of bass. And then if we needed any other instruments, we'd just get people in for the day. So it was still, and it was very blues influenced. So it was a very stripped down, like, you know, simple sound. But I didn't have the money to take a band on tour afterwards. And so it was really coming from a place of like, I am so bored just playing with an acoustic guitar. I need to have some rhythm in this music. And a friend of mine at the end of a rehearsal for another band I was singing with, had a loop pedal in his bag. And he was like, let's just have a mess about with this and see what it sounds like.
You say another band you were singing with. So
Yes.
what?
So when I was trying
Yes,
to,
you were singing with Yes.
well, not yes. When I was trying to get a record deal, I couldn't. I got an offer in America and it fell through, and then I couldn't really get any offers in the UK. I had my publishing deal, but I couldn't get a record deal. And there was this one record label that offered me a deal like early on, and they were called Relentless. And they were a couple of different imprints. There was Relentless, and they were also a label called Outcast, and they were an underground Asian dance DJ label. And they had
Right.
Nitin Sawhney was like a
All right.
brilliant. Was there, but they also had like the So Solid Crew 21 Seconds single. And I was like, this is insane. Like, why would I sign to this label? And it was not a lot of money for like 5 albums. And they said, well, we just really like you. We like what you do. And they said, well, to get to know us, we've got another band that's instrumental. And they need some top line and a guest vocalist to get on the radio. So why don't you go on tour with them and get to know us, whether you want to sign with us or not? I was like, that sounds good. Who are they? And they said, they're a 10-piece drum and bass klezmer band called Oi Vavoy.
A klezmer, yes.
So I just went on tour with a 10-piece Jewish klezmer band.
Fantastic.
10-piece drum and bass
klezmer. It was brilliant. I had such a good time.
I tell you what, they must have upset their rabbi.
Oh my God. It was brilliant fun. And
I must say, I missed that category in the Grammys.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. Klezmer, drum and bass.
Exactly. I'm
Look,
sure it exists.
Now when you're looking back on that album, did you discover stuff about it that you didn't recognize when you made it?
Going back to it just now.
Yeah, 20 years later. I mean, because there's some music you found as well.
There's an obvious thing, yeah, for instance.
Yes. So definitely the fact that we kind of revisited these tracks that weren't released at the time, notably the title track.
The title track,
Yeah.
Do
yes.
you know what I'm saying? So I'm just going to say this as well, because we always butt in. We're terrible for it.
It's terrible.
If you go to therapy, right?
Yeah.
And what do they tell you to do? Well, they tell you to imagine your younger self, don't they?
Yeah.
It's kind of a therapy doing this, isn't it?
Yeah,
Going back and seeing what your younger self thought.
Well, one of the really crazy experiences of putting this re-release out with these old/new tracks was there's one called Anything at All. And I didn't put it on the record at the time because it was very slow. And I really felt like the average tempo of the record would be too slow if we added another slow song to the album. And I felt like we had enough. And so I've been trying to get this song, Anything at All, on a record ever since then and haven't managed. And so glad that we've waited till now. But the crazy thing is, it's the vocal from then. So it's 28-year-old me singing. And I sound about 12. I mean, I sound like a baby. And then so getting the track ready to release, I'm in the studio in Santa Fe putting 50-year-old me backing vocals on a different person singing the lead. And it was just so crazy hearing that voice in my ears and singing along to it.
It's really touching because at that point in your life, your father was still alive.
Yeah.
Your life was very different.
Very different. I mean, I was a very different person in a lot of ways. And I sound different, And it's this song about, it's a really sweet song about just not being able to communicate with someone that you love. You just can't have those conversations that you kind of need to have, and the words aren't available in that relationship. And so it's a very yearning, longing song. And also, you always get asked, what would you tell your younger self? And the song is about, I didn't have the chance to tell you anything at all. And that's me sort of singing to my young self who never got any advice from old me.
That's amazing. But that also feeds into the thing we were talking to at the beginning about the difference between an artist and their fans, because you're saying the thing that they, because obviously the younger you are, the harder that stuff is.
Yes.
And so you want someone to say that to you.
Yes, exactly. You're being your own guide, elder.
Yeah.
I think the reason that the album was so successful as well, to me, was that you were maturer. You had experienced a lot of life.
Yeah, I wasn't a kid. It was interesting because I had been through life. I had experience. I had traveled a lot, but at the same time, I was living very unconventionally. I didn't have any responsibilities. I wasn't married with kids, with a job, with a car and bills to pay. I was on the dole trying to make it as a musician. So in many ways, I still felt 17. I hadn't had to kind of grow up. I was still very young, so I felt very young. But there was wisdom, and part of that wisdom was really understanding how rare it was that it was working. And just having had 10 years of shut doors and nothing happening, you then really appreciate when things are happening. And to my detriment, I said yes to everything. I mean, I worked so hard for and I definitely had sort of physical ramifications from doing that. But yeah, you really appreciate it at that age.
Before you go, can we talk about just briefly doing a musical? Because you did Clueless recently, which has been on for about 6 months or something. Guy and I have written 2 musicals.
Yes. Have you?
Well, we had one on briefly at the National Theatre, didn't we, Guy?
Well, congratulations. What was that called?
It was for children. It was part of their Connections program, which is where a load of people, all sorts of top writers, Patrick Marber, all sorts of people, wrote plays for schools, for the National Theatre.
Fantastic.
And then schools did it.
Yeah.
And whoever did the best one got to put it on at the Olivier. And ours is still performed.
Oh, fantastic.
It's called The Bed Bug. It was originally written by
Mayakovsky.
Mayakovsky.
Yeah.
And Mayakovsky, directed by Mayer, and the original music was by Shostakovich, and that was rewritten by Snoo Wilson, and we rewrote all the songs.
That's fantastic. What a great project.
But how was it for you writing a
Yes.
I mean,
just you did proper musical theatre, didn't you? And you're on at the Trafalgar in the West End.
Yeah, total roller coaster, extremely steep learning curve. It could not be more different from rock and roll. So I'm in the theatre, the drummer's playing, and I want him to play 16s on the hats instead of 8s. And I'm not allowed to tell him. I've got to wait all day and then tell the music supervisor, who then tells the music director, who then tells the copyist, who writes the music out again, and then I get my 16s. And I was just
but
like,
you've
this
done
is
theatre.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but you've done theatre training. That must have been really useful.
It was more. The theatre studies was much more to do with actual theatre rather than musical theatre. So, but I was very lucky that I was working with Glenn Slater, who's a Tony Award-winning genius lyric writer. He did School of Rock and Sister Act and all these brilliant shows. And so I said to him, should I read all these books? He was like, no, just ask me. And so he really gave me a great training, because the very tough thing about musical theatre is learning the structure, where you've got to really be adherent to songs at the right time and in the right tone and telling the right story and making sure that, my God, you don't have anything in there that isn't useful. It's so lean. You've got to tell this story so well with just music. And it's Jenga. The director will suddenly just go, oh yeah, we don't want 16 bars there. And you're like, everything bloody rhymes. You can't just take this stuff out.
But were you didn't write the lyrics, so were you writing music to his lyrics that he was giving you? I was writing
music to his lyrics, and his lyrics were just absolutely brilliant and ready formed. you know. And with that song, with that musical, because it was a 90s musical, we decided that every song would have a sort of North Star inspo. So there's a Green Day song and a Right Said Fred song and an NSYNC song and an Alanis Morissette song. But I am working on another one, which we're hoping to get on stage pretty soon, and that's with Craig Ferguson. Um,
Oh,
and he
right.
wrote a brilliant and starred in a brilliant film in 2000 called Saving Grace with Brenda Blethyn,
Yes.
about a middle-aged posh lady who starts selling weed, which is
Weed,
really
that's it, yeah.
funny. And I'm doing music and lyrics for that one, and it's really challenging and just beyond rewarding seeing amazing people, you know, performing your stuff on stage. It's really cool.
Have you got any touring coming up?
Yes, I have got some touring coming up. I've got what am I doing? I'm going to Australia in May.
Great.
Then I'm going to Japan in November and Hawaii, and then I'm coming back to Britain next summer. I'm going to be playing Isle of Wight Festival,
Yes.
which will be fantastic. And I think there'll be a bunch of other things around that in the summer. So I really hope I get to play some shows, because I did the Albert Hall on my birthday, which was amazing, my 50th birthday, and we played the album start to finish. And I would actually really like to take the album out to do a few shows around the UK and Ireland to just let people enjoy the album and celebrating
And
it.
there's a bit of your dad in it as well, isn't there? Because Eye to the Telescope came from your dad.
Well, because I wondered if the fact that that song wasn't on it, but you kept that title, was some sort of maybe even unconscious nod to your dad.
Well, the whole thing's a nod to my dad, because he'd taken
Right.
us to the observatory when we were kids, and it had just completely blown my mind, you know, where your life as a kid is like how far you go on your bike, you know? And then you go to the observatory and you just realize you're on a rock hurtling through space. And it's infinite, and it just completely blew my mind and got me really into science fiction. And I think one of the things my dad said, which I'd love to share, seeing as we're talking about him, was he was a physics researcher. And I remember him coming home really angry one day, and he was saying, it's just terrible. They're only giving us 5 years worth of research funding, which is, we might as well not even do it when we've only got that. And I said, what do you mean? That sounds like quite a lot. And he was like, I won't see the results of the things I work on in my lifetime. I'm just part of the process. These things take decades and decades and decades to find out. And I just thought, God, how incredible that it's enough to dedicate your life to be part of a process. You're not going to be the person getting the flowers at the end of it, you know?
You're standing
it's like
on
those gardeners, isn't it? Those great gardeners planting. You know,
yeah. Inigo Jones or someone. You're standing on the shoulders of giants in science, aren't you?
Exactly. And it's an honor to be part of that line of people. So that really also makes me massively appreciate being a musician, even compared to being an actor, because you get to every 3.5 minutes, you get a massive cheer. And I've got like actress friends who are just like, yeah, we made the film 5 years ago, and I go to the premiere and like, you get this and that's it. But you don't, you know, it's a one-off thing. And like, as a musician,
unfortunately, as musicians, you also get to see your own denouement quite often. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
I've got to say, I did a one-man show for years, and I've got to say, comedy even beats that, because you just have to wait till the end of the line.
Exactly.
And you get the laugh.
Exactly. But I
think, I will
say, I think stand-up comedy is the hardest art of all.
Don't tell him that.
It's so hard. No. It's like you haven't got the music backing you up. You literally, like, I get worried about telling the same stories in between songs on one tour, you know, and comedians they've just got to make it fresh every time.
He had an audience laugh on his loop pedal. You kept teasing
exactly.
it, didn't you, Guy?
That would be perfect. Canned laughter on your loop pedal. Just record the best one and keep playing it.
I think you're lucky, Katie, that I didn't think when I got mixed up earlier that you said Charlie Drake. And And just thank God for small mercies.
Yeah,
thank you so much for
absolutely.
coming on, and good luck with
what a pleasure to
the whole
talk to you
box
both.
set
Thank
re-release
you.
thing.
So lovely to talk to you. So great.
I mean, is
Really
it a box set,
appreciate
by the way,
it.
or is it just a long streaming, the re-release? What do we?
No, it's like beautiful vinyl. So it's
Fantastic.
streaming from today, and then in a week's time, it's the most gorgeous vinyl. And I think I'm so happy people are really back into having something in their hands, because I think that's, like we were saying at the start of the conversation, the artwork is such a big part of it, of the experience of music being made.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Loads of love,
Thank you
guys.
so
Thank
much.
you.